You're still muted, Tammy. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Sam. Hi, Anna. Gertruid.
My apologies for being late.
Wir sind alle da. Das ist gut.
Look at all these lovely human beings.
Hey, I have to apologize. I'm late on a very key deliverable from my CEO who just said yesterday that he needs it by the end of day today. So unfortunately, I will not be able to participate, but I will leave this recording going.
Do you want to pass powers to me, Sam?
Yes. Let me do that right now. Okay, done. Again, I will miss you all, but I got to keep my CEO.
Hi. Yeah.
Enjoy.
Hey, Sam.
I was happy. Wow. It's been a long time since I made the CEO happy. I tend to make them very unhappy.
In our last session, we mentioned that it would be good to pass the facilitation around, and I'm curious if anyone wants to pick that up today.
I would love to sometime, but not now. Since 9 o'clock, I'm in. Just my head is empty. I couldn't even think of what we should do.
Don't feel attached to the frame or the purpose or the whatever. I just been away too long, so I could just only fool around.
Well, isn't that fun?
Sure. I thought this kind of was about collaboration. I don't know if that would help collaborate.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so maybe we could then do a check-in. We're starting with Glenn.
Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Just having a peaceful day today. So I listened to some of the previous call a little earlier, and now going to be some peaceful weeks. A lot of snow outside, so I like that. It's very, very peaceful. So I don't know. Don't really have all that much special to begin with. Just nice to see you again. So yeah, I'll just pass it on for now. Oh, new person.
That's Will.
I will.
I will.
Hey.
Are you with us, Will, or just faking it?
No, I'm just getting my stuff together. I'll be right there.
We will just start the check-in. So normally Sam who's recording for us is hosting it, some kind of, and Tammy is always very much the leading lady. But she's passed it to me, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I suggested Glenn would check in, and now maybe it's a good opportunity for you to introduce yourself. So most people have met each other before, online that is. And are there any people who met in real life in this group? I don't think. So. Welcome, Will. Who are you?
I keep on asking myself that. Do you want me to go ahead and introduce?
Yeah.
I'm Will Van Wichen. I live in Olympia, Washington. I'm involved in many different projects. I'm agent of purpose for Enlivening Edge magazine. I do community building, tribe space holder, a lot of different roles in the magazine. I also work with Agent of Purpose for Next Stage World, and I do community conversations for them. And my passion is about collaboration and being able to work together in a more collaborative, co-creative manner.
I knew that.
Yeah, you did, Doug. And yes, I have met you, Harry, in person when I was traveling through Europe. I got the pleasure of meeting a lot of really wonderful people.
Okay, who's next?
I'll jump in. Welcome, Will. It sounds like you're right in the pocket of doing really powerful, important work in the world, and it's an honor to have you here. I have to step away in about 15 minutes for a short phone call, so I'll just heads people up about that. And it is winter. I'm in Vancouver, so we're pretty close geographically, and so what I'm really passionate about is coming from a state of being where I can work with other people to reframe where we're at and how we can navigate transitions of systems from the very human and to the global systems that need to shift and change. And I'm really excited about that story and living that story in generative conversations that allow us to see ourselves. So I'm really curious about your community conversations, Will, and I am also just really grateful for every person that is here, and I feel like we've got a beautiful family building where we're able to meet each other and come more whole and take steps together. And the learning here has been just really deep and amazing. So that's me today in a little wider view.
Nice to know you're a neighbor.
I'll go next. Just being to a Christmas play at my granddaughter's school, which is a Steiner school. And it was lovely watching these kids sing and dance and do a whole Christmas thing. And we don't have any snow yet here, which is disappointing. It's very cold. I think it's too cold for snow. But we're still hoping. And my thing is just being as present as I can be. I have really no idea what is actually going on in the world and with us. It feels like I have to begin at the beginning every moment, just being with it, because anything could happen. So that's where I am. And I'm really glad to be here. Could you not hear?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we had first snowfall here where I am. And so my innate reaction was to make breakfast for my wife, see her off to the city, and crawl back into bed and hibernate. And I'm really sort of aware of fields connecting in this right now, because there was Fleming's circle up yesterday, which Harry popped into just in time for everybody to say goodbye. And then rolling out of bed and into this, good morning, Harry. This is like becoming a thing. And to have Will here, and I don't know whether I can't keep track of the Thursdays, so I don't know whether the Andrew session is something that you stick your head into, or whether you take a vacation for that. But right after this, there's another one, and with commonalities, and so this aligns with the idea that, you know, the first step is to think it, and the second step is to publish it and put it out in the universe, and then take the actions and do the things to make it happen. And I had already sort of addressed in a couple of circles to a few different people this idea that one of the dreams that I had was about sort of figuring out how to engineer two of these groups, like a solar eclipse, just landing on top of each other at the same time and place, just to see what there was to see. I'm a big fan of that. You know, why did the bear go over the mountain? And it's to see what he could see. And so learning how to work and play and talk together and share together differently, I believe these conversations are the top of that heap as models and practices. And so it's happening. I sort of see this as like, there's a partial eclipse. There's like these the beginnings of a convergence and overlapping of people and energies. And that's sort of exciting and different and new. And, you know, energetically, really sort of unknown, and so I'm very curious about emergences around that. I have reasonably deep awareness of Will and his energy and his thing, his gestalt. And I feel evolving, same with everybody here. And how these things converge, and how you guys get to love Will the way I love Will, and the way he gets to know you guys the way I love you guys, and all of that. Like, how does that happen? Which is really what it's all about, regardless of all the other stuff. So with that, I'm happy to be here. I'm really happy to see all of you. And Gertrude, I don't know whether I tried pinging, but I'm hoping I pinged the right, you know, place, because you had mentioned you wanted to talk. So I just wanted to touch base on that. I'm ready, willing, and able when you are. And with that, I'm complete.
Yes, you picked the right person. And I apologize for my age after the G. Yeah, I'm from the other side of the pond, not your part, but from Doug. I'm from Germany, north of Frankfurt, and so it's in the middle. When you put two rulers on the corners of Germany, in the middle. That's yeah, my mission is being source of appreciation for people in organizations worldwide. So I some time ago I said I have more these kinds of connections worldwide than in Germany. And by the way, I wrote 2 articles in the Enlivening Edge about appreciative inquiry and the journey to teal, and about holacracy and the break. And yeah, so when you put in my name, then you find it. Has really changed, but nevertheless having to do that. And yeah, and with our book, it was like a contribution to that, and knowing that if we don't connect personally on a personal level, teal or whatever will not succeed. So the personal to that new development, to going teal or whatever people say, new world, next stage, yeah. So, and I want to share, no, maybe I do that after but I really want to share one interesting episode I had 2 days ago. I have a brother who's a really smart guy with patents, and yeah, he's a medical, and now he doesn't want to do that anymore, and he's working with years. We had the first conversation beyond family greetings.
Gertrude, your internet connection is breaking up, and I don't want to miss what you're saying. And there was a drop out there that made it impossible for me to follow the thread. Do you want to try just when you're talking, turn off your video and see whether it helps with your bandwidth, and then we might get your audio.
Okay.
And then you can come back when you're not talking.
Okay. So to make it short, I had that conversation with my brother. Is it better now? Okay.
Yes.
And he was talking with me about what he's doing and things like that. And I told he said he didn't read my book yet. This is about appreciation in the workplace. So how to create flow and meet the numbers. And then I said, oh, that looks like, do you know the book Reinventing Organizations, Frederic Laloux? And he said, that was the best book I've ever read in that realm. And then he went on, and I said, well, I worked in the wiki with him. I worked the whole year with Frederic. I know him personally. And he was like, oh my God. And he didn't have a clue what I'm doing. And then I haven't seen him for 2 years. And I said, oh, on Wednesday, I'm near you. Can I come to you? And then I stay there. And then he spends Christmas with us. And And he really wants to know it all because he didn't know a thing. And he was in the same, you know, he's just about to learn those things. And was so flabbergasted that I did, oh, yes, I know. Yeah, I know him. And I did that. It was so funny. Well, so new disciple in this.
Yeah, great story.
I really, I was decent, but internally I was so laughing so hard. It was because he never took anything from me. It was, I mean, he knew it all better. Yeah. So looking forward to next week. That's my contribution. Thank you.
It's a great story, Gertrude.
It goes to that idea that, you know, we are all connected all the time. It's just we don't have sense awareness of where and how and what. And you know, there's a weekend workshop that I teach, and I don't think here was where I shared it, but there was a situation with a student where he described a very specific set of facts, a very specific story and thing that had profoundly impacted him in his life. And the structure of this is that there are 20 students and there are 55 or 60 assistants who are volunteers who've been through the weekend before, who are there just to support the students. And so he shared the story, and I had made a point before the weekend started of saying to the assistants, if there is a resonance, if something comes up for you, if there's a recognition, make your presence known, raise your hand, step up, because you're also a teacher here. And an assistant raised his hand, and he had experienced the exact same loss under the exact same suddenness and level of trauma and discovery and horror in terms of what had occurred. And so the two of them were in this weekend for that reason. Nobody knew that. That wasn't planned. But they were able to support and heal and reflect and know and understand and connect with each other in service to both of their sort of healing and getting past this thing that was literally defining and controlling their lives. And people in the room often see these things as, quote, miracles. And my sense and awareness of them is that they're all over the place. All just don't know. Your brother didn't know you were, partnered with Lulu in creating the book. It's like, we don't know. We don't know. And our culture is not designed and set up to encourage people to share and disclose on that level so that everybody can know. You know what I mean? Like, it's designed to isolate each one of us and to commoditize us.
Yes.
So, yeah, great story. Great story.
I'm just wondering whether that weekend, Doug, was the Mankind Project?
Oh, the workshop I was talking about?
Yeah.
No, it's a sort of curly red-haired stepchild of the personal growth and development world called, this particular workshop I taught in Israel, it's called It's My Choice. In the United States, it was called, it went by another name, but it's an Adlerian freestanding standalone meet your maker, for want of a better way of putting it. We, in a very active way, we help people find the parts of their programming that have been affecting the part of their life that's been, controlling things forever, and we help them experience themselves without it and to move on. And it's a pretty powerful, it's a pretty transformative experience. 5 or 10% might actually withstand resisting all the way through, but they always end up even affected at graduation for having lost the opportunity. So we rarely leave anybody untouched. And for me, when I experienced it as a student, it changed my life. That goes back to 1998. So I ended up teaching it. But yeah, there's no larger organization, curriculum, upsell, anything. It's just this standalone weekend. So.
What is it called?
Well, where I've been teaching it of late is in Israel, and it's called It's My Choice. And I'm not sure what centers are operating stateside, but it was called the Living course in the U.S. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience. But we see these kinds of things just all the time. People in the room will be going, well, they'll be looking at each other wide-eyed, and inside I'm chuckling my ass off because I'm like, of course that's why you're here. The universe has a way of providing if you let it.
That makes me curious about this event.
Same thing, right? Same potential, same.
I have to look in the ovenware because I'm at the same time cooking my dinner.
We are suddenly without a facilitator. Bereft.
Oh, we don't need no stinking facilitator.
I love those kind of moments of silence between us, though, and I think that's a big part of the emergent process, is feeling into what's next.
And I need to say that I love Doug's laughter. It's really, it has such yeah, it's like, do you know Alexis Sorbas, the movie? Well, it's just this depth in the face of humanness.
I just wonder, is there anyone who has some questions that have been on your mind, or that's been sort of keeps coming back? For me, I've been thinking about this human being centered system for technology, humans, society, all kinds of things, and what that would be. But I don't know if that's a good topic, or if there's any others who have any, because I feel like there's some questions that are like they just keep coming back. So maybe there's something there.
Such as?
Well, for me, I mean, I keep wondering about sort of what the well, to make it very specific, how we interact with information technology and communication situations and just general daily living tasks, and how does the day look like in the world of tomorrow, or in one of the possible worlds of tomorrows that we want to go to. Let's say there's a world somewhere in the future, which we would like to get to something like that, and then from there, many other worlds are possible. I wrote something about a software in interface, and someone asked me, what is the user experience like? And so the experience of what kind of society we may want somewhere in the future. What would that be? Is it possible to make it a little more specific? Well, one thing which also came up was this talking in a way which is transformative. And we had a little Facebook thread about that where Terence McKenna was mentioned. And he, I understood it such that was very much what he was, trialogue. Yeah, that's right. He had many trialogues with Rupert Sheldrake and Abraham, and this theme of speaking reality into existence very much interests me. Is it possible to use language in a way where we create a potential, for example? Can we create reality by envisioning it and describing it in a certain way?
I think it must be true. For instance, you mentioned this Terence McKenna. I never heard about the guy. I knew Rupert Sheldrake. But then I watched the YouTube video about those trialogues. And then this book, I mean, this is not my house. I just rented for a few weeks, for a few months. And it's over here, in the closet. It just was next to me. So that's kind of miracle that's happening. And I was just saying to myself, okay, it would be interesting if we would describe to each other our desired future, the way we see it, when we have arrived there where we want to be. So that's a way to, and then you're next to me on the screen, Glenn. You say, okay, let's talk it into existence. So I would very much like us to do that. Guys, I have my own stories in my head, what I would like to happen, or what I think that should happen, etc., etc. But we all have. So anybody interested to share something?
You go ahead, Harry.
Okay. Well, I'm very much like the thing, act global, think local. And so we are here together in a group, we're kind of the representation of a global society, because we are all over the place. There's 4 from Europe and 3 from the other side of the ocean. And we are talking about to each other, so what needs to happen and how do we want the future to be. And I think having this kind of networks and conversations and being connected all over the world is one part of it. That's reasonably high level, because we talk about what needs to happen. But anything that needs to happen here, in my world here. That's where I need to act. I cannot go to Canada or America to do stuff, or change the world in Africa where the poor people live, or stories like that. That's not what it's about. If the world needs to happen, my world needs to change. So what needs to change? Well, now there are all these, we created these huge corporations and institutions but they kind of took over because they became our rulers, and we all want to take it back. So in my future, all power is distributed in a way that nobody can take it for himself and be more powerful than anybody else, because we all know, and it's been proven scientifically, power corrupts. In game theory, it's all tried and tested, so people become corrupt when they think they're winner. Because if I win, I'm entitled to win because I'm the best. If I lose, it's the circumstances. I couldn't help it. So that's all in here, so I can't help that. So we have to organize ourselves in a way to protect ourselves against all those traits we have. So in my future, I think we all will be kind of artificial tribes, so to speak. So you become part of a certain environment, and I have to decide here and to rule here and to work here with the people right here. But the way I do it, I can have all those connections and sources, abundance of advice and friends and other networks that can help me with it. So that's roughly my picture. I can go on forever. And ownership is one of the things that needs to change, because people owning stuff, I can use stuff, but I don't need to own stuff. That's evolving right now, right? So it's sharing and all that. That's very primitive still, but we know that's somewhere that's smarter. So that will happen. And I read coincidentally today about that land should not be owned privately. It should not be owned privately. People they hoard it, and they have huge pieces of land just to be safe, feel safe. That's not good. This is our globe. We're all born into it, and we have a right to live there, to do that together. So ownership and property is also, that's up for discussion for me as well. So with that, I'm complete for now, just as a starter. Thank you.
So I agree with all of that, and I'll raise you. So if the first step is recognizing human beings centered first on an experiential, multidimensional basis, and secondly, in service to commons, because if we're not all in service to the collective interest, we're all going over the extinction cliff. Like, that's already written, staring us in the face. The piece in the middle, then the sort of next immediate step is the values piece. Because each of us individually, as a generative contributor to whatever the collective is that we create, whether it's local or whether it aggregates up to global, if we're all not in agreement about our values as informing and defining how we are going to contribute and generate individually and collectively, and how we are going to treat each other, and how we're going to do together, if we don't have agreement on that, then we sort of don't have a prayer. So, and this is fruits of Fabian's and my labors over the last several years, but if we can come to agreement by and between us about how we want to relate to each other, how we want to relate to the world around us, and how we want to go about generating value and contributing value to the world around us in a common-centered way. And each individual has to both contribute to defining those values. That's the distributed power thing. It's not about power anymore. It's really about enfranchisement, I think. It's that each individual man, woman, and child on this planet has to be recognized as having generative potential to contribute and be given the means and the affordance to have a voice and to participate and contribute. Everybody. Like, no one left out, without prerequisite, without requiring literacy or technology or affluence or skills or training. That on a human level, every human being is capable of contributing value. But the first steps mechanically are they have to be given the means to be heard and to listen and to register their vote, their voice. So just on a really basic level, you don't have to invite the power meme to the party. Like, there's no reason for it to come up. It's that thing about, you know, that parable about the battle between the good wolf and the bad wolf. There you go. And, you know, and the chief is asked, you know, well, who wins? And the chief responded, the one you feed. So I don't give any thought or energy to what I don't want. I don't give any thought or energy to the energy and forces and legacy industrial structures that are responsible for most of the ills we're confronting, because I believe we can render them obsolete and literally just, you know, substitute and replace non-violently. And so I look at it as, you know, we're going to have a party. It's called the future. And who do we want to invite? And what do we want to invite and include in the room? So power doesn't have to be included. And frankly, the leadership meme, which is so laden with industrial stuff, I don't think that necessarily has to be invited. And the idea of ownership, which is completely industrial, 100% rooted in scarcity and control and authority and wealth and all of the ills of that whole thing, doesn't really have a place, doesn't have a seat at the table. The planet is a resource, a shared resource of the commons, and the commons is not just our species. There's all these other living creatures. Right? So there's a huge constituent like population dependent on this one resource. So it's got to be held in service to all. And the local thing that you touched on for me, I'm a unit of one as a generative contributor to our world. That's the only thing I control. And on an aggregated basis, the community, the neighborhood, the immediate proximity, I'm a contributor to that. I have no need to define or control or extend or assert power or vision or authority over anybody else someplace else. I recognize and respect, if my core value is aligned, that they have that right to define and for themselves. Right? So it's holonic in that sense, right? Like, there's me and mine, and all of us being all over the world, each of us is a seed crystal for spreading a vision, and those holons can influence and affect other people around them, and then other communities and other groups around them, and Will being here and us being here, and that's a whole nother circle, that's a whole nother hold-on, and there are resonances between the two that are vastly more similar than different. And that we, you know, collectively contribute to this field that's being generated. And the emergent out of that is very real and concrete to me. But not necessarily identified or recognized through an industrial lens. Like the industrial world doesn't even know what's going on with us. It doesn't have language for us. It doesn't attach value or significance to the output, to what's being generated and created. And that's okay. It doesn't have to, as long as we recognize the value. So I don't think any property constructs, I don't think national boundaries make sense. I don't think national governments make sense. You know, the British and French imposition of borders in the Middle East are responsible for 90% of the difficulties. If the indigenous natural Hellenic, you know, cultural groups were allowed to be, you wouldn't have 90% of the conflict that's currently going on. Because they were like imposed on. So, and I'm complete. Sorry, that was a little long.
I'd like to take up just that last bit that you were describing, because I think it describes us as human beings too. That, if I can remember it, that something in us wants to find essentially who we are. We're looking for our real nature, and we have been imposed upon right from the very beginning. So this wanting to know what it would be like if we were really, truly ourselves, I think that is the question that Glenn is asking. What would it be like if we were really, truly true to ourselves? What would our society be like if we weren't imposed on right from the beginning? Because you also mentioned something about people needing to have a voice. And I thought, well, a baby has a voice right at the beginning, but that voice is squashed from the beginning. So as long as we're squashing it, there's no way that people will find a voice. We have to go right from the beginning to make a change, to encourage that child, that baby, to express itself fully and to get to know its own true self. And not easy, because we have no idea how to do that. We're just feeling our way.
Glenn, could you mute?
So I'll take a moment to land in this space. Ownership is really quite a key piece that we need to shift our relationship with. And one of the things that I've been deeply considering is that the only thing we can truly own is ourselves, our bodies, the work that we create with our minds in collaboration with others, and our voice and our image. I believe that we can own that, and that is in right relationship with our purpose as conscious beings. And so part of what I see is a potential for us to explore, is to create the context, to own the representations of our voices, our images, our expressions, and that in part what it is that we really need is to be able to create value from that place, a wisdom garden, a knowledge garden, a wisdom economy. These are things that I think hold great promise for us and literally can help us shift the power from non-human entities, institutions, businesses, that whole industrial construct that Doug talks about, to something where we own our own voices, we own representations of ourselves. And in contexts like this, where there are 7 of us gathered, that we are practicing collaboration by owning this moment together, as well as the artifacts that are generated from this moment. So personally, what that looks like is deciding to share or not to share, and who to share with, and taking leadership, leadership initiative, to share it with others that will find it of value. And in part, it's to connect our work in a web of unstoppable, unbreakable change, because we are all powerfully stepping into a future together. And I think the mechanics of communicating, sharing, creating greater value through our understanding together and building a sense of coherence together gives us a baseline to work from. So more specifically, in terms of a use case, for me, I would like to have a technological mechanism that allows me to have the capacity to create value through media assets that are artifacts of the work that we do in these collaborative spaces, so that value can be transformed into value that's bridging where we are in the world to where we're going. So obviously there's the value of being able to share knowledge and information, make connections, and create and develop relationships, and that is of value. And I think that there's a flip, there's a switch that we need to make in terms of creating the context and constructs to make that value both visible and actual and activated. So in that there's things we have to build. You know, when I look at the holochain and the work that Daniel Harris is doing, and the work of Stephanie Rearick with the Mutual Aid Network, with, you know, Michelle Bowens, with all of us here as well, there is a powerful body of work that just needs to be understood, connected, and the space held to be able to really come together on it. For me, it lands in a place of being able to own my own identity, and to be able to create artifacts that are meaningful and hold that space of, what is it, performativity, where we're, that action is actually creating change in the world. And I think that that's a really exciting path to be on. And there's a lot of inner work to be able to show up in that place. And there's a lot of interrelational work to develop the trust and the ways of knowing and being to be able to appreciate, create the space for, and continue to generate insights and real world actions and activities that can help us to transition in a way that can be seen, heard, and added to and acted upon. So I kind of see that we need to have something like a universal identity wallet that gives us the ability to control our the artifacts of our identity and how we might share that with others. And I think that there are a lot of people that are on that tip, and I think it's powerful to look at what that might look like and how we can actuate it.
Love that, Tammy. Can you tell me more? I'm intrigued what you mean by artifacts of our identity.
So this here is being recorded, and so there's an artifact of our collective identity that's represented. It can also look like Harry's work in terms of graphic facilitation. It can look like blogs and articles. It can look like audio pieces. It can look like intellectual value that's created in any form, music, movies. For me, the directness of showing up authentically as ourselves has another layer of realness that I think I'm just really excited about. I see a lot of potential and capacities that we can bring to light through really being ourselves in these kinds of spaces. But it's pretty inclusive to all things that are currently under the guard of copyright. And I think that that's one key thing that we can socially shift as social contracts and agreements by creating something that's better. And one last word on that is, one of the things that I use there is, rather than copyright as in rights and responsibilities, RIGHT. In my work, I use copyright as in WRITE. And so we write our reality by interacting with it. And all of the artifacts of the cultural world belong to all of us as a commons in my world. And in terms of performity or performativity, we write our world by interacting with it. And that generative, creative force, I think, has great potential to bring us in the driver's seat as human beings to enact the change that we are being as we are doing.
You mind if I ask more questions? So it sounds like you're wanting to create a evolutionary structure around which all of what you've talked about to evolve. And is that what part of the purpose of this group is? Is it how do we as a collective come together individually and collectively to create and establish that sort of evolutionary structure?
That carries my purpose, and I feel that is shared. But certainly that's something that I'm seeking to clarify and build here.
So I'm not sure how deep folks would be willing to or are interested in getting into the weeds. But there's a thing that has actually been outlined, which is the platform for human beings, like in service to human beings, as a holistic experiential foundation for what each of us individually and collectively do and generate and collaborate and create together. And we call it the CMM. It's the Collective Metacognition Machine Works, which is the most like complicated linguistic name we have for anything in our portfolio, Fabian and I. But I just want to share, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a screen share of a document. Can everybody see this? So this is an outline, and I'm working on the little laptop that could. So if it freezes, I apologize. I'm really technologically underpowered for this. But the premise of this is technology and a platform that isn't exogenous, isn't outside of our experience. It's just it's running underneath us as we work and play together. And it knows us. It knows our preferences. So, you know, we inform it about what we like and what we don't, and how we like to be communicated to and how we like to communicate. So the opt-in registration is more robust, and in terms of people being enrolled. And the generative attribution audit trail, Tammy, is our response to sort of that piece of the puzzle you're talking about, which is that in real time, as we contribute to something, it's automatically tagged with the fact that we're contributing to it. And that's metadata that's melded to the content that's being created as we go. We don't have to think about it, it's taken care of. And anybody that references that is going to know everybody that was part of contributing to it. And then the data, so our orientation toward data is that data is a byproduct of human generativity. It's not a thing in and of itself. Data itself intrinsically has no value. It only has value within a human experiential frame when human beings are engaged in generating stuff or contributing stuff or creating value. The minute it leaves that context, it's valueless. It's just like zeros and ones. So we relate to data through that lens, that it needs to be grabbed on the fly in real time. It needs to be very richly identified and tagged multidimensionally with who contributed, what was the most dominant topic of conversation, what was being exchanged, and what was being formulated and created. And that all of that, we have the technology today to grab all of that on the fly and to repose it. Now, that's the data layer as a capture thing, but then you have data flows, information flows. So there's flows internal between us in real time. And then there are also flows between us not in real time, where somebody's screening this later or somebody is reading a transcript of it in another context. So you have flows internal to us as a collaboration and a community and a collective, and you have flows to other collectives, right? And you have flows of new data into us that might be sourced by somebody, and flows that we create and generate that are going to flow out. So the flow part of that is a different facet. But again, all designed in service to the human beings involved in what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they feel about what they're doing and how they feel about the other people that they're doing it with and because the experience of all of that is important too.
Question, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug, sorry. Is this a program? Is this a something that you're evolving? How does all of this get processed?
This is a vision for
Okay.
repurposing technology in service to human beings, generating and interacting, rather than human beings working in service to technology.
Okay. Human-centered technology.
Human-centered technology. It's technology in service to us. It's designed to give us what we need when we need it, and to know what we want when we need it, not when some soap company thinks we might be heading out to the supermarket to buy their product.
Yeah.
So it's completely recontextualizing the whole sort of lens through which we look at technology and technology development. So this is literally a human being-centered specification for a platform to be built.
Okay.
This is like the top level, just north of getting into the weeds, specifications, architectures, affordances, capabilities. So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Is it possible, aren't we to do with, technology in the service of it, yet isn't that where we're wanting to go, is to be able to do this within our own human mind and framework first? It seems like we need to embody this, and the technology will come out of the actual people embodiment of these concepts and principles.
It's yes, absolutely. But this is sort of this exercise is very much based on that sort of reverse process. Like the number of times I've had somebody, well, in Tammy, in one of your videos with Helene about pattern language, and her saying, I wish there was this platform that.
Yeah.
And the ingredients that she asked for, we tried to extract and make explicit. So we identified all of these sort of functional facets or layers that automation, if pressed into service to provide that, would truly be in service to us rather than the other way around. That's what this exercise is. That's what this whole thread is about.
Okay.
Is figuring it out. Like, what would that look like? What would we want it to do? And my searching for Tammy and Helene and having an icon pop up that says, well, here's the link to that video if you want to share it with these folks. And, oh, you just invoked pattern language 5 times in 3 sentences, so here's the pattern language references and stuff. And, like, technology should serve us mimetically, semantically, cognitively, emotionally, not the other way around. Not prey on us, which is what it's doing now.
I hear you, yet I get a little bit of a glitch of the separation. That's where I have just personally a little issue around that, is that of them versus us, rather than we are collectively, there's parts of us that suck, there's parts of us that are wonderful, there's parts that, you know, recognizing both of those parts. And to me, we've talked about the focus, and is that I just, you know, the more we focus in on what we don't like, that's what we're going to get. And where if we can focus in on, you know, seeing our grandest vision of our greatest version of ourselves and keeping focused on that, rather than bringing up all of those things that, yeah, you know, the military, you know, I came from the 60s, you know, the military industrial complex and all those other evil empire things. And, you know, this way, the universe will provide us those very things of which we need, as long as we keep that focus in our energetic signature to there. I totally and firmly believe that the right places, people, and things will come that can generate that.
And I want to say, I think this is an example of that. This is being generated now. This vision of this collective metacognition platform. Yeah, I really want to say some things about this. This is very big, of course, but also very specific, and I really, yeah, feel this is very much the direction. Also, which I feel is very promising, because you mentioned, for example, values, common values. So we can probably already figure out some values which are common. For example, I think many people really love efficiency, not wasting resources, spending time well, having a good quality of the conversation, having an ability to be expressed clearly and heard, as well as an ability to understand well what we want to understand. I think we all have a value of safety, of feeling secure. We have a value of wanting to have positive relationships with those around us, to feel that we are loved and valued and that we're useful. So that's just a few examples, and those values I think are clearly aligned. And if we build architectures that are based around those values, which actually go together, then the game theoretics will sort of fall into place, and the kind of behaviors that help the collective will be rewarded individually, etc., etc., etc. And also some of those. I mean, you're talking about a kind of next level of artificial intelligence or human hybrid intelligence or something. Some of it's already happening, but it's in this framework where there's always someone who wants to. I mean, there's forms to draw our attention in a certain direction, which isn't what we're interested in ourselves, and that's a problem. But that can be solved. But okay. So I'll just jump into this with some different things, and it's probably incomplete, but I think it touches on all of this. So first of all, people-centered. So we have if we have people, so you have the names of people, and that's one kind of abstraction, the names of people, and that's that's specific to each person. So you could imagine a system where the names of people, that's a key element of the data. So let's say that each name of a person is a holon, and you can put into that holon all kinds of other data. So you can put in important facts about that person, that the person themselves want to be acknowledged. And you can also have real-time tracking of what they feel, etc., which some of it they can do themselves, some of it can maybe even be measured automatically. If we have more advanced facial recognition technology, for example, you could probably have programs recognize facial expressions and get something meaningful out of that, as well as voice. And there's a lot of research being done there. And even though the research is still in this industrial frame, I think it's still incredibly valuable because we can later put it into the right frame. And so a lot of what's already happened, which maybe has happened in the wrong way, but it can still be incredible in the long run. So in the future I see that the human being centered perspective is very important, and it's also each person has a responsibility for how they act and how they say and what they do. So like, for example, in these conversations, I feel that I'm only responsible for what I say, and others can say whatever they like, as far as I can know. I mean, whatever they like, really. We can also talk about how we want it to be, and that's a part of it. That informs it. That aside, if somebody breaks the rules, okay, you move on. So it's never going to be about having anything perfect. And if we want to imagine a dream future, it's never going to be perfect either, because it's going to be dynamic, shifting all the time, and that's the way. But we could imagine a kind of dynamic which is more harmonious and which builds on itself and has an evolutionary process built into it, which leads to a little bit greater wisdom, greater understanding, integration over time. And that is kind of the goal of the scientific method, which is a very popular idea. And as far as I can tell, it's a great idea, but it's also an idea which probably has been constrained a lot by these structures, which, pursue other interests, let's put it that way, than just truth and beauty and all of that. But still, a lot of great values come out of it through history. So there doesn't seem to be any need to discard what's been, but it's like, if we can just find out what the context is, for a more harmonious way for people to cooperate, then we can take all of the gold from all of the different traditions into it, and so that we may come very quickly to a place where we can really get something fantastic. Okay, but there's also another thing. Now I really also feel that the pure technological part of information technology is still, I really would like to see systems that are a lot more human-centered. That's one way of putting it. But it doesn't need so much maintenance. So it's like, if we could just be natural and talk natural and figure things out and do our thing, technology could be in the background. We wouldn't have to micromanage so much, because I feel that today still there's a lot of bugs and irregularities, and there's a lot of things you always have to do, and it sort of breaks up the flow. And even here, you know, sometimes it's internet glitches, and like we should probably, it should probably be quite possible to have far better technology, which is more stable, more reliable, faster, more intuitive. And maybe, you know, there have been, maybe it needs a different paradigm for that to happen faster. Because I sometimes wonder, why hasn't there been more progress when it comes to the sort of basics of information technology? Take one example, the keyboard. Like, what, using QWERTY keyboards? Like, seriously, I mean, it hasn't in 20 years. I mean, but okay. So a lot of details to this, but I'll say one more thing, and that's permaculture. I think that's also an important part of this, because if the permaculture can come to a high enough level, you can have truly self-sufficient local communities. And when you get to that level, then actually people will have a choice to just, they can always come to such a place. We'll get into real abundance. So if we get into real abundance of the basics, the basic needs, that will be a great safety net. It will relieve a lot of tension. It will bring a lot of dignity too. It will really change the whole feeling of humanity, and we can actually quite realistically get to a point where there's no poverty, like serious poverty in the world. And like if we can get to that point relatively fast, that will change a great deal. And so I see permaculture is one very important part of it. Information technology, definitely a very big part of it, and how we use it, and the means, of course, the information structures. They are incredibly important. The artifacts you talk about, Tammy, they are a byproduct of the human experience, just like you said, Doug, and we're demonstrating it here. So through this experience, having this talk, there's a byproduct of memes and structures and data that comes out. If those data can be the kind of data which, let's say, describes visions of possible futures, and then describes visions of ways for us to move towards those possible futures, a little bit closer, then we probably have this performativity, is that the word? Something where we're actually creating a new reality through these conversations. And that's the kind of intelligence network of the commons, which I've also, always had a vision of, that these conversations can be part of an intelligence network of the commons. So it then starts to build. Yeah, and I see a lot of pieces in place already. This doesn't seem very far away to me. Actually, I sometimes feel that the actual information technology, if just this had been better, everything would go so much faster. It's almost like that's what people talk about. We need new systems. I think we need new computer systems, like that are bug-free and fast and a little bit more like human-centered, and where we can have our hands free, and I guess we're on our way there. Well, that was many different things, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
I'd like to come back on that. Quite often when I listen to you, Glenn, I feel a sort of frustration because there's this if only. And like you say, it's very close. I mean, permaculture could actually supply all the needs that we have in terms of food. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We could be living in abundance, but we're not. And that's the bit that you always leave out. So why? What is it that's stopping us doing that? Yeah, we are very close to it, but there is a reason why it is not happening. And that is the thing that somehow needs to be addressed. It's not like it's just if we manage to create this abundance, then of course everybody knows that. But what is it that's stopping us doing that?
Us.
Us, exactly.
Yeah, well, we in spirituality and stuff like that, you know, we could solve poverty overnight if in other words, we're just on a developmental journey. Harry and I were talking about this, and this is very germane for me because I'll just relate it to myself. If I did this and if I did that, and what is stopping me from being the grandest version of the greatest vision of myself? It's me. It's that, and it's not wrong or right. It's just that I have not developed the capacities to hold that next level in which to fully function and operate. And I'm in a developmental phase, and I'm a teenager now, or, you know, whatever level of development I am. And I'm learning to but I'm learning to give myself compassion for where I am in my own developmental stage, knowing that I can't stop becoming an adult. That right now I'm a child or an infant, and there's nothing I can do to stop myself from growing up. It's that how much in alignment am I going to be in fully experiencing the developmental stage I'm at, being the best I can, laying down the foundations. And as you know, what'd you say, Harry? You know, we've spent all these years missing out and not filling in and not growing up. And so at some point in time, we have to fill all of that stuff from our past, you know, back in so that we can have that foundation in which to fully express and experience ourselves in the love and in the essence of who we truly are, which is love.
So it's not just you on your own as a teenager, but humanity. So it's an interchange, isn't it? That you couldn't actually fully develop until the whole of humanity fully developed.
Yeah, because we're a whole. We're all
whole.
We're all part of this, and that's where I fall into the problem of bad mouthing that quote unquote bad side of myself, and not accepting the other side and seeing myself. Wow, I really like that. Thank you. Seeing myself as the earth, as humanity, and there's a thing called somatorespiratory integration that comes from network chiropractic, and it's, you know, I have parts of me I love, And then the lower, I have parts of me that I don't. I have parts of me that are grand. I have parts of me that are suck. I have parts of me that are mean. I have parts of me that are kind. And the polarity, and then you laugh, but they're all part of me. And accepting ourselves, myself, is just perfect the way I am.
Yeah.
One thing, Anna, so what you were frustrated about was that why isn't it like that, right? And I also feel a little bit like Will, that it's something psychological which is holding us back. But maybe it's just that we don't believe that it could happen because we've never seen it happen before. And we've been told so many stories about something else. And so there's many reasons. Of course, it was never possible before for all of humanity to really act harmoniously. So it's not so strange that the thought, in one sense, is very strange to us. But I don't know.
Until recent, it was not possible to sit behind my computer alone in my house and have conversations with people all over the globe. I couldn't. Can't be happening. So what it is right now, and we know technology is evolving faster and faster. And all those things you talk about, Glenn, the technology is there, but I totally agree with Will. We have to evolve in order to be adults and autonomous and all that, again, to act towards the world we want to create. So I have to start creating my world myself and hoping that you will resonate and do yours and collaborate. And then, yeah, I will make it real. Or fail, but that's part of the game. Go forward.
There's a big amount of unlearning to get out from under all of the things that we culturally have been programmed to believe as immutable that just aren't true.
No, fairy tales.
And yeah, well, they're more malignant than fairy tales because they've really constrained, humanity as a species. It's just been a really powerful affect and influence. But it's not true and it's not real. And we have the ability, individually, I have the ability to choose. And I have the ability to choose, for me, that's the bounds and limits of my power, authority, and control. But each person has virtually unlimited generative potential. And history is littered with folks that have done the most horrible things as forces of one, and folks that have done the most amazing things as forces of one. And every single human being has that innate potential generative power and ability to create. At least that's my belief. And unleashing and enabling our species globally bottom up, unleashing that potential, enabling that potential, I think will result in the emergent solution, collective solution of what ails us. And the technology piece, it's already been built. All the ingredients to make that soup exist, including, a biometric device in the hands of a grandfather in a mud yurt in the middle of nowhere connected to the internet with a button that clicks that enables him to say yes or no. You know, we literally could get the voice of every man, woman, and child on this planet enabled and online in dramatically short time. And we have the abundance and the ability, the permaculture stuff, all of that on a decentralized basis to feed everybody, house everybody, meet everybody's basic needs. Today, all the ingredients to make soup are there. But I think it's about we have to do that. And coming from a place of, and not doing it through the old lenses. It's like trusting that if we empower and enable and enfranchise everybody at grassroots, bottom up, collectively we'll work it out. And I don't know what that'll look like. And I don't need to control that. And it doesn't have to be consonant with what works for me today, as long as it works for everybody tomorrow. And Will, what you were saying, you know, evokes for me, you know, the idea of unconditional love is loving somebody in the way they want to be loved, not the way you want to love them. And in order to love unconditionally, to love others unconditionally, you have to love yourself unconditionally. Means, at least this is what I got to, that the me that got me as far as he got me before I told him to let go of the wheel, I would take it from here, right? Good, bad, and ugly. I had to love him in order to love all of me, in order to love others. And that there's nothing in the rearview mirror that's relevant or meaningful or matters in terms of what do I want to write on the blank page of today. Each day is a creative moment with unlimited potential, no rules, and I'm the god of it. I get to determine everything that gets put on that page, good, bad, and indifferent. It's my baby. I own it. And so, you know, what do I want to create? And it's all good. And by the way, what you're doing, like, in fact, is a lot and very powerful in the role you play in Enlivening Edge and all of that stuff. You're not, like, deficient at all in the significance and value of the contribution you make every day now. I just want to acknowledge you for that. You're a force. And it's really good to feel you here, by the way.
And by the way, say hello to Alia.
I will. I'm going to have a conversation with her today. She is quite the amazing person.
I know. I met her in Hungary.
Okay.
And I will in May. I was thinking, listening to all of you, I was thinking we might be in the Middle Ages where Kepler started to tell, well, the world is round, and nobody believed. I mean, the means were there to cross the globe. They had ships, but they came back, wow, we might fall down. And the whole, I mean, it was that paradigm. I think it's even not a matter of constant growth from child to whatever, but something like a state change or we are not able to use those methods that are already there in the way that would make that difference, because we are in that old paradigm, because we afraid or even not able to see that maybe it's about scarcity and abundance, or I said a little bit about the streetlight model, about survival mode or campfire mode. And so I think what Glenn says, it's already there, and it's just around, I mean, it's just before daylight or so, but it's as if you flip, what do you say, when you turn on the light, the switch.
Flip a switch.
The switch, yeah. It's, but if you don't, and that it exists, how can you do that? So so finding our way in a dark room, and I think that is what comes up for me, and sometimes I really feel in the Middle Ages, because why is it that way? And I think people had dreams at that time too, that went beyond the normal frame, but nobody dared to, and yeah, and there were some people that had to be brave and go first. Columbus was not the best sailor, but he was daring to do it. And the other thing, that coming back to Glenn's first question, was using the words, the right words, to generate what we want to have in the world. And that's different from describing things to creating or generating things. And that has completely different grammar. It has completely different time, what you say, times, yeah? So past tense and things like that, yeah. And in the appreciative inquiry realm, we create future statements. These are, when you have the interviews and things like that, then you create the future you want, or you envision the future you want to live into, and then you build the bridge with words towards that future. So that's what we call the future statement. And I just copied it out of our article.
You just muted yourself, Gertrude?
Not intentionally. So those.
Can you?
Yes. Yeah. So good future statements, but I could say generative language should be provocative, challenging, and go clearly beyond what happened so far. Grounded, since traceable examples from the past show that it is possible. Affirmatively formulated, they describe what will be and not what should not be. Expressive, they have the power of attraction, so inspirational. Motivating, they represent an attractive future. And formulated in present tense, this supports our brain's realization power. And I think that was, yeah, I think
they're great.
That's the language we need to, I mean, not everyday language, give me the butter or so, this is not, but in those conversations where we really want to create the future. And for important dates, I tried to formulate this from the future. So the future already fulfilled. like in holacracy, we create the future, the purpose in that way, the future already fulfilled. And there is a lady, Claudia, I don't know the second name. I met her at the Appreciative Inquiry conference in Johannesburg 2 years ago. And she started, at that time, she already had 500 words, a dictionary of appreciative language. So I know a friend of her, so I don't have her address, but she's living in Cairo, and she was there at the revolution, the Spring Revolution. And yeah, we were talking there about the capability of our language is really limited as the view that the world is a disc and you cannot go beyond a certain, yeah, and so this is really in that environment, in the appreciative inquiry, so to say, or community. There's several people that start to create more language that is appreciative, which is not necessarily always generative, but the combination is the best.
I'm not sure that I feel totally comfortable with this. And I'm not sure whether you're, although this seems to be the way the conversation is going, that we shouldn't mention the negative things that are happening, that we should only focus on what we want to happen. My feeling is that we need both, that we need to be aware of what is happening, as reported, you know, by scientists and so on. I don't see clearly the reason for excluding that, unless people find it overwhelming, which some people do. It sort of creates despair. But if that is not the case, if it doesn't create despair, then I think it's important to keep our eyes open to what actually is happening. And the possibility that however close we are to this human-centered other way of generating the world with our positive words, there is, at the moment, it feels to me just as much chance that we won't make it. And that, you know, it's a 50-50 feeling that climate change will get there before we do. So that would be my feeling, that I wouldn't want to exclude unless people felt, and I think everybody has a right to make that choice if they feel that it's overwhelming. You know, a lot of people don't watch the news anymore. And I understand that.
I want to answer right away.
Sure.
Okay, you do it, Gertrude.
Yeah, for me, it's not either or. It's just that what I said, this is generative language. I'm just talking about, and in the appreciative inquiry process, it's one specific phase where we specifically go there and say, okay, how can we create that bridge into the future? And so this is just to say, how can we talk that way, that we create that future? But I didn't say we don't talk any other. And
Thank you.
and in the in what we said, this is our view of what appreciation is like. We said in the first sentence of that, appreciation starts with a clear glance on what is, and going from there. Because before we don't know where we are, we cannot know where to go. So this is not excluding that or neglecting what's not working, but not focusing on what's not working. I think that's another thing. We can acknowledge and say, okay, stop that. We want to do it in a different way. And then go that way. And maybe have to do some therapy, I don't know what, to be with what's so. So for me, it's important that this is not the way we talk all the time and the only way we should talk.
There's another piece of the puzzle from my perspective, Anna, that if our generativity as human beings is a product of our time and attention, then if I want to maximize or realize my maximum generative potential and contribution to the world, then what I devote my time and attention to is going to be that. So through my lens, if I spend time and attention beyond the sort of what Gertrude said about recognition of what's our starting place, it's where we are now. If I actually invest time and attention focusing on what's wrong, that's less time and attention I'm devoting to trying to figure out how to do it better. Like I'm just on a straight sort of allocation of human generative resource or energy. Any sort of parsing or diverting of my time and attention to things that are not part of the solution is just contributing that to the problem or wasting it.
I'm totally with you.
But it's not prescriptive. I didn't hear that prescriptively in terms of you can't acknowledge or talk about what the starting place is, which is really a nightmare. You know, and I live in the United States, and you know, it's in our face on just about every dimension of our culture this minute. So, yeah, but how to fix it?
Another thing I think about is, like, if you take the media, for example, very many of the stories which are shared are stories about, let's say, just disasters or scandals or negative events, but they're also decontextualized. So that may be a good example of something which, on the one hand, it's negative, and it also says almost nothing about what actually is here now. So maybe we need to find a way to speak about what is here now and do it in a way which is at the same time generative. That's one thing I sort of hear here in the field. Like for example, if I have a reaction or feel sadness or frustration, then yeah, like you said, you had a frustration, you expressed it here, and that seems to me generative when it's done in that way, because we're moving in a direction. So kind of seems to be about the way we talk about it more than what we talk about. We can talk about what is, because what is always the beginning, right? It's always, we have to begin from now, whatever now is. But can we talk about what is in a way which is also generative, which also moves us in a direction? It's kind of like if you say that there's a problem, you can also say it's an opportunity. Or if you say I have a weakness, it can also be a room for an improvement. And if I acknowledge and understand my weakness, then I'm already in that process. So if we can focus on what really feels important, the good and the bad, or whatever, but if we can do it in the right way, it's that feels very creative to me. And I think we've already had some of those moments in these talks where people have shared whatever's on their mind, and it's had a creative effect.
I would like to share a story, a frog story. Yesterday evening, I heard a frog story. There were a herd, a big bunch of frogs. They wanted to climb a big mountain. They all went there and even supported each other, and one jumped higher than the other, and then they didn't succeed because the mountain was very, very steep. So they got, to a certain extent, everyone did his or her thing and came a little bit far, but nobody could. And then there was one frog just leaping until he climbed the mountains. They all generated, they said, okay, we do that together. And this one, he just did it. And then the other frogs said, how did he do it? And they glanced at each other and nobody knew. And then the cousin of this frog said, well, he is deaf. Because everyone was screaming, you can't do it, no, it's too steep. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many self-imposed limitations, aren't there?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gertrude, for that. I really want to underline Anna's piece that she's flagging up for us, because I think it's really important that we find ways to talk about our context, our state, what is. And we need to call it out, like part of, and I recognize absolutely that where we focus our time and attention is critical. And I feel in Anna's share, I resonate with that frustration in terms of being able to say, hey, actually, this is what's going on. So I'll give it a go. For me, what's happening is a power play on the planet, and that there are forces at work to keep us disempowered, and they non-human organizations, governments, specific families, and this isn't speaking in terms of a conspiracy, but rather a way that we have come to be in our social structures that literally disempowers us, in the main part economically. And so where I feel we have power, feel we really need to call out the truth, is in those ways. So as a corollary to building a world where the value that we naturally create as human beings can be made available, can be shared, can be used, which is part of what gives it value, is when things are used. That we also look at what those barriers are, because we can't really pussyfoot around the fact that there are powers that be that don't want to see us emancipate ourselves. And I'm not interested in underlining the truth of that. I just want to call out that that's part of what's going on here, and we can't stick our heads in the sand about that. And there is, I think, a socio-cultural fear that of us, where we don't necessarily know how to own that power, to call that out. And how do we do that in a way that's effective? Because standing on a street corner with a sign is not going to do it. But clearly articulating how power is brokered through the current system is, I think, important to connect with how people understand the world works now. And, for myself, tons of public outreach work, political work, support with environmental and economic change groups, initiatives, and the thing that everyone's looking for is a voice, right? So it's not about just having the voice, it's about being able to fully articulate as embodied, in a way that can be received. And so I think that what we're learning here builds the capabilities and capacities to be able to articulate and deliver that in a living sense. And I think that that's an important opportunity for us all to feed into and test and practice. Because you know what? It feels scary to stand up and say, hey, there's all of these, there's a big series of problems that we're facing, and these are the people that are in charge. I mean, I actually don't even know how to say it, because the frame is beyond that which we are given agency under. And yet there is no limit to our agency, truly. It's just how we believe and what we believe we're allowed to say. So I feel this kind of like the form or frame isn't quite fully developed, but we have to blunder forward and say what we think, and through that expression as a group to be able to fill in the holes of what isn't being said, and deep listening, so that we can do the work of collective intelligence to fill those gaps and create a wider picture between us. See how I danced around that? Like, I don't know, did I even say what I think?
Well, are you saying
You said it
to
well.
me that there is a fear to actually say what you really? I'm in England, and that feels very different. But in America, does it really feel that you cannot name what you really feel is going on?
I mean, I'm in Canada, so.
Oh, okay, of course, yeah.
But I feel like it's more about the narrative, the public narrative. And when I talk to people about one because I do fundraising, public outreach, talk to people on the buses, whatever. I'll talk to anyone, and in that, people are very frank. But in terms of the mediated conversation, it's not what people are talking about in living rooms and in public. And so that narrative, I think, needs to be pushed back and changed. And this here gives us the framework to be able to do that from a very human, real, authentic place. And I think we need to grow that.
I have one little thing I'd like to call out before I forget it. And that is when you talk about non-human entities and narratives, I've noticed that there's a sort of attention economy, a click economy, if you like, which sort of draws our attention. And this uses a lot of us and them thinking and stereotyping. And this has a divisive effect. And this may be a big part of the problem. And also very well-meaning people who want to change things for the better can get stuck in this narrative where they blame the people in power. And I think that's what Will was talking about too, that there's this a non-acceptance. And some of this is held alive artificially by these algorithms to just seek clicks and attention, because it draws our attention. Just these outrageous stories of they did this and he did that, and conspiracy theories and whatnot, and all of this draws our time and energy and attention away from actually building this new world. So I think that's also an important piece of this, to recognize that we are being bombarded by those narratives which actually have a divisive effect.
I'm taking you all on a tea tour. Sorry about that.
There's a piece of, blame is a really interesting and nasty thing. And there's a piece of blame, to Tammy, what you were speaking about before, where in order for me to blame you, I have to view me as a victim. And in that is that I've given you power over me. Whatever I'm blaming you for means that I've transferred to you responsibility for what I'm on the receiving end of. And in the US and the forces of darkness in terms of our current political reality, a very small minority preyed on fear and set a lot of that manipulation up, and distracted a lot of people and sucked in a lot of people to be very afraid. And all things being equal, nothing situationally or circumstantially in the country had changed. And all of a sudden, overnight, one guy says, this is and got everybody to believe it. And it was a completely subjective cultural, social manipulation. It was fear. I mean, it was all rooted in using and leveraging and manipulating people's fears. or their susceptibility to be put into fear. And so that shifting of responsibility to the person that somebody blames is the internal reality is that it's an expression of their lack of ownership of responsibility for whatever they're experiencing, but also an expression of their feeling of powerlessness. And to Glenn's point, I really think, that a lot of media, but a lot of sort of the cultural setup in terms of programming people, human beings as humans doing, as resources, or as resources to be exploited in an extractive way. Facebook isn't a social platform, social service to its users. It's a harvester of their data. And human beings on the service are data sources and buying preference sources and exploitative information generators. They're not human beings through Facebook's lens, and I don't think Google's any different, frankly. And that's the cultural paradigm we're living in. But I also believe never in the history of the planet has there been more power in the hands of the individual via the internet and technology to create a video or write something and change the world. And some of the most powerful viral things, are somebody sitting in their bedroom. So the yin and the yang of it, right?
Doug, I didn't want to let that pass, your interpretation of how this situation came about in America. It's very questionable. I think that's a huge discussion. So I don't feel, for me, it's okay just to say, yeah, that's the way it happened. And also, it feels like that's a sort of a blame, saying that was the way it happened. I wouldn't say that blame is altogether black either. There are times in our lives, especially when we're younger, when blame is a way to manage hurt or trauma. And it's quite important to be able to see somebody else's part in what has happened to us. But at times it's also totally inappropriate, like you're saying. So there was just such a lot in what you said that it's just impossible to, to connect with it all. But, we're actually now coming onto a whole different discussion about how the situation came about. From my point of view, just to put this in, I don't think anything has changed in America. It's been that way and it has continued that way. And this guy has made no difference from where I'm standing, but it's just developed on the course that it was on already. And I think the same for the whole of the world, really. We're all on that course. So, but that is a huge discussion, and it just doesn't feel like starting that at the moment. My goodness, it's 7:20. Wow.
I have a question for all of you. Since I'm new to this, and just Harry and I were talking, and it sounded really cool. For my own information, the purpose and intent of this group?
Great question. When Doug was speaking, I was just getting some feels around. We're building the human capacities to enact the technological things we're talking about. So the capacity to listen, to respond, to see what is between us, and to feel our way forward. You know, what is the decision-making process of what gets to be spoken of next as we're all co-contributing into this group field. I think that those capacities are critical for us to develop together, to listen. Like when I get to look out on the screen, I always have my screen on speaker view so that I can see everyone tiled there and read the field as I'm speaking, as other people are speaking, and to be able to hold more information and be able to navigate that complex structure of real-time decision-making in terms of what it is we're going to create right here, right now. And so for me, the purpose of this group, I've got deeper, wider hopes, but the purpose is to actually practice the human capacity to collaborate, to listen, to speak our truth, to share our knowledge and wisdom in right action and right relationship as peers. And you know, all of that learning gives us so much. It's like this explosion of awesome. And it's almost just as overwhelming to look at the beauty and complexity and inspiration that lies between us as it is to look at the oh my God, we're hitting the brick wall of the end of the world scenarios that's happening in the current what is as a shared reality. So both are incredibly overwhelming and require us to be different in how we biologize information, how we share together and touch each other and express love and appreciation, as well as that really more difficult edge that Anna was putting her finger on in terms of speaking truth to power in the ways that we out to do. So yeah, the purpose is to show up, be present, and see what's emergent between us as we are on a journey of discovery with who each other is, what we bring, and how we can weave our contributions to responding to what is.
I like that.
What she said.
Yeah, what she said.
As you see, Will, it's an evolutionary purpose. And it's in the realm of the global challenge thing. So we come together in that realm, whatever there might be developing out of it. But yeah, so it's not a written intention, a written
And you just became part of it.
purpose, but this, yeah, we just sucked you in. And somehow it brings us together twice a week for more than 2 hours. So.
I just want to second everything Tammy said. I thought that was really well expressed just everything you said there. And also I feel there's many purposes in this process, that sort of this process serves many purposes at once. So it serves us in the personal journey. It's also a collective learning, because over time we understand more, and there is the media artifacts, and so it's like one process with many purposes in all directions. How I see it.
Yeah, and it's mainly practicing forward.
What do you mean, Harry?
Well, we just practice it when you're doing it. I'm not knowing it before, and I'm just doing it, and then this collectively discovering what this is. How I learned to listen, and I learned to shut up. I learned to sense when to speak. I learned to kind of, without really getting everything, kind of let it simmer in my brain, and then there's too much information for me to process and to hold. But there's an evolving and building trust in me that together we are going faster than I ever could on my own. Things like that. And it is by doing it is far better than just sitting here on my own and inventing the new world and then writing a book and having it sold or something like that. This is far more fun and effective.
Maybe we've all volunteered to be deaf frogs together.
The Deaf Frog Society. Wow. Sounds like a book or a movie.
I love that.
And we are filming, so.
I'm going to jump in with a many of us, of course, have had so much prior work. But one of the things that I did a little bit of work on, I created some banners, and it's called We the Movie. And this process is an example of that We the Movie. So we are, and the byline for that was action personified. So it really lands in that performativity meaning, which I'm so excited to find out that that word was a word.
I learned that word here. I never heard of it before.
And one of the actions of performativity, it could be that you're marrying someone. That's a way that words create an action. So this is like a live and generative creating of the future together. That's like a really exciting way to explore what performativity can be as a action to create agency towards the change that we want to see and be in the world. So yeah, I just wanted to drop in the We the Movie meme, and that we are performing action as personified beings of conscious intent, and that's really exciting.
I need to leave, and I just wanted to thank Harry for facilitating this group, and to thank everybody else for being in it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
Bye, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna has a point. I'm becoming kind of tired and distracted too, so maybe I could hand over my facilitation.
No, not for me. I think we can do a closing round. That's
it would be lovely to get out.
yeah.
Gehen Sie weiter.
Reaping.
Does someone want to pose a final wrap-up question?
Yes. Did the future become did you get nearer to your desired future?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love the synchronicity. I appreciate all the pleasure and the joy. Yeah, because we manifested this as I was just talking to Harry, and Harry said, "Hey, you gotta try this out." And the very thing I was talking to him about, and and here it is. So it got instantly manifested.
Yeah, for me, it's a milestone because the overlap, the eclipses started, the melding of and crossing over of conversations and communities. So this has been a very generative, like an active, manifestive thing. And Will, thanks for taking the bait. It was great to have you here.
So this is how it works. For me, this is also a step toward the future, that networks starting to touch each other and intertwine, and information and the knowledge starts to flow from all those different places, the spreading. And I love this. I really like it a lot. And in me, for myself, in my learning journey, this is, Harry, trust the process. It's okay. And I know there's all these horror stories happening around me, and yes, and we are in danger and all that's true, but I cannot. Well, the only thing that helps is just building a new future and put all my energy there, and it's a lot more fun as well. So is that complete for the moment? Thank you.
Yeah, I also feel a little closer to the dream future than a few hours ago. So yeah, I feel that this process is moving us in that direction, and we're learning along the way, and there's many more specific projects which I could imagine, which I would like to do, and there's so many things, but just having these general conversations 2 days a week, it really feels that I come back to the basics, and then out of this very open field, there's a lot of more specific themes which have naturally come up again and again, and which I would like to go deeper into, and we'll, of course, maybe that's a little for that will be the natural continuation, that there will be some also specific talks where we can look into one very specific question. For example, this collective metacognition machine works. How could this work, for example? I think that's one theme which has come up again and again, and so yeah, so it's a very rich process, since the whole human has to be a part of it. It just flows forward. So yeah, I really feel a little bit closer to the dream future, definitely, than a few hours ago.
Yeah, I can take it on. I just thought about a quote of Peter Drucker many years ago. He said, the ageless essence of leadership is to create an alignment of strength in ways that make a system's weaknesses irrelevant. So that's very, very hopeful. I mean, there's so much we can do that.
I like that.
And I was thinking of two generative words that we created. One is friction gain. Even in Germany, it doesn't exist either. So always when we talk about friction, it's loss. And so how can we create friction gain? How can we create that out of what's not working? We can see, proceed, and what can be the essence out of it to make it better. So that's not in the dictionary yet. And the second word is in between, the in between. And an English teacher said it doesn't exist either. So this is that what we share so often, this quantum time, this in between.
That reminds me of another call I have to make. I want to discuss I have to connect a few things here because before I forget. Doug, I'm also with a group working on a platform, and we do have a lot of thinking that is parallel to yours. So I think we need a discussion about that. And one of those people is Geert Martens, and I need to talk to him because he discovered that I'm a friend of Dave Gray, who wrote a book about liminal thinking. And liminal is also the position that you're on the threshold, at one time in your mind. So you have the one belief system and the other. And that's kind of what we are doing here all the time. So a lot of things, there's so much coming together. Whoa.
And to answer your question, Harry, yes. Yeah, thank you all. And it's very nice to meet you. Anu, Will.
Okay. Any more questions?
I will introduce Ben to you, I think, for the new year, because he should be here.
Yeah, this will grow.
So my little checkout, did I do one? Okay. I feel like we're doing it. We're in it. We're growing it. And that we are building these beautiful capacities and relationships and knowledge and how to listen and the power of listening. And I feel that we're a beautiful little petri dish of the future right here. And I'm so honored to know you all and to witness you all and to learn from how you share and communicate. And I think, yeah, I feel that we are stepping into the future in very real ways in this space. And I'm deeply grateful to participate and be here.
Okay. Thank you all for being here.
And thank you, Harry, for leading.
If this is leading, that's easy. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.